Call the City of Lloydminster regular council meeting of Monday, February 10th, 2020 to order at this time, and we will take a silent moment for some reflection. As a reminder, all members of council are obligated to declare a conflict of interest or a pecuniary interest as per section 133 of the Lloydminster Charter regarding any item on this agenda. Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to declare for 7.2.1. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, so noted. Thank you. Is there any additions or deletions to this agenda? No, I'm not seeing any. I'll call for approval for the recommendation for the approval of the agenda. Councilman Monroe.
That the regular council minutes dated January 27th, 2020 be approved, or was the agenda?
We'll just approve the
Sorry.
agenda. No problem. You're close.
The agenda dated February 10th, 2020 be approved.
Thank you. Seconder, Councilor Torres. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now I'll look for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Councilor Torres.
I move that the regular council minutes dated January 27th, 2020 be approved.
Seconder, Councilor Monroe. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any. I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Moving on to, is there any business that arises from those minutes that we need to deal with at this time? Not seeing any. We move to public hearings, which is scheduled for 2 p.m., so we'll return to agenda item number 6 at that time, or as close to it as we can. Moving on to item number 7, new business, City Manager's Office.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council. To present 7.1.1 entrance signage, I'll ask Dan Thompson to come forward to present.
Good afternoon, Your Worship and Council.
Good afternoon.
Here today presenting Council with 2 sign designs for their direction moving forward with the entrance signage project for the City of Lloydminster. Just some quick highlights. You'll note that sign A, or option A, this is our original design idea. It's approximately 16 feet by 18 feet. Sign B is the one administration is recommending moving forward, and we've worked with the contractor to develop, and it is approximately 14 by 9, so a little taller, not quite as long. Both signs being proposed here are backlit. There's an example there on sign B. You can see that the Lloydminster and the welcome to would be backlit at night, and both signs are proposed to be powered solar powered. Option B does have some added costs, which are covered with the contingency. It's basically just the materials being proposed here are more expensive, as well as both signs would require breakaway posts to be installed on the Alberta side, so there would be two signs that are impacted by that as well, and those are within administration approval thresholds as well. I'd just like to take an opportunity to point out that we feel sign B better reflects our community, has some homage paid to our history, as well as just looking to the future and where we're headed, both as a community and regionally and economically as well. Happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Dan. Questions, comments? Councilor Buckingham.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you. I have concerns. We're spending X amount of dollars on signage. We're going to spend more on sign B option than we would have spent on sign A option. And my concern is that we're going to end up spending even more. You take a look at the sign that's on Highway 17 right now, it's very reflective of option A. The colors, the scheme, the whole 9 yards that goes with it. if we're gonna brand our community and we're gonna brand ourselves together as one, I'm concerned that that sign looks like sign A, and our new signs don't look like sign A. So then are we gonna come back to council and say, okay, now we gotta change the sign there to reflect the other 4 signs that we just put up? I'm really concerned about the branding side of this, and the added costs that come with changing it all to reflect something else later. And maybe it's the direction we're going, and that's completely debatable. But I just wanted to say that if we're going to brand ourselves a certain way, it should all be the same. So I'll leave it at that.
If I may, Your Worship, the only comment I'll make towards that, Councillor, is that the sign you're referring to on Highway 17 was more of a quick fix type sign. We were limited as the city in what design choices we could do with that, because it was almost a repair or retrofit job. So from an administration standpoint, we wouldn't want to be limiting our brand moving forward based on what our options were at that time. I can't speak to what designs may come forward in the future, because that's a downtown sign. I would posit that in the future that will change to represent the branding of downtown. But right now, there's no plan for administration to address that moving forward.
Yeah, it just concerns me that we're going to end up with an additional cost on that sign going forward for sure that hasn't been noted or put forward at any point in this presentation. So I'm not comfortable with having different brands out there. Thanks.
So noted, Councillor. Councillor Monroe.
I'll just speak to that. I actually think the recommendations coming forward to us does have a lot of continuity with the sign downtown. Although it's not identical, I think that there are definitely elements in it that are representative of the sign that we have downtown as well. For me, the Lloydminster, which is really what we're welcoming people to, is the part that stands out to me, and I think that that's the most important thing, rather than having a big orange wave being the first thing I see when I come into a community. I'm going to see this, that I'm in the town of Lloydminster, and I think that that's what we're trying to put forth to people that are coming into our community, what we're putting forth to potential developers that are coming into our community. And so from your perspective as an economic development officer, I think that you're bringing this forward to us because this is your best opinion on a professional design that we should be putting forward, as well as I really do like the fact that Lloydminster is the thing that I'm seeing first. And like I said, I just absolutely disagree with Council Buckingham, the fact that I really do see a lot of elements that are the same in this sign as the one downtown. Just because they're not identical doesn't mean that they aren't representing the same thing.
I'll add my comments here. It's very interesting just having returned back from the Municipalities of Saskatchewan conference, as well as other conferences where someone, when I have the opportunity to introduce myself, they go, "You're the place with those big orange signs or big posts," or whatever they want to refer them, the border markers that we better know them as. And I think that's the branding that sticks out in my mind for the city, because we're known for those 4 border markers. Everyone that's passed through this community on 16 Highway, that's the first comment they have. I look at Councilor Baker, you've been around this a lot longer, and I'm sure you've heard it when there was other challenges, but I think that's the key message that comes out to me, and I know it's in both of them, and I'm challenged and I struggle with this as well. I think that from the perspective, and I hear what you're saying, Councilor Buckingham, that someone may come and ask, and I think at the time when it's due time to renovate that downtown sign, I hope the council today would consider it, but it doesn't mean that it has to be, and it doesn't need to be renovated. I don't think, as we've tried not to do, spend money out of sorts just to keep up with the Joneses, as it's sometimes said. So I really appreciate the ability that having 2 options. I thank you, Dan, for doing that and bringing the opportunity to try and bring our community together, both as an urban and a rural setting, because the community is made up of people that do business on both sides and visit our city every day and are part of it. And I know we have to have discussions about rural and urban setting. I think that trying to help people take down those barriers is a positive thing. So I see where the direction of number 2 or option B was highlighted, showing a little bit of a country look, because I guess no matter what, that's where we all started from in many cases, was our rural roots. So I'm glad to see the border markers are on there, on either one, whatever option council chooses. But I think that's when I think of our branding, I know that it's the bigger picture, and I know Councilor Buckingham, you know this very well, because you make your living out of it. From that perspective, I think that, you know, it's challenging. And it's going to come down to a preference, I guess, among councilors. So I'll leave it at that. Councilor Morrison.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just a couple of quick questions. As far as materials, wear and tear, upkeep, is it about the same for both, or is one easier to keep up? And I'm basing solely on colors on the picture. To me, potentially one would look less dirty, or at least would hide the dirt, so it would require less maintenance. To me, and I could be wrong.
They're both signs are made out of similar materials, and they should hold up.
So I very much said at this point that any sign is fine by my books. Like it really doesn't matter at this point for me because I don't really have an eye for design or anything like that. However, I will say that, you know, when you look at these things and you want them to last 30 or 40 years, I think using more of a classical look rather than something that's kind of trendy and happening right now would probably do you a favor. And I do believe that the wood-grained aluminum panels might actually stand the test of time a little bit better than the orange wave. I don't want to run into a scenario where it looks really, really dated in 4 or 5 years. So based on that, I'd say I would agree with your assessment and go with the wood-grain aluminum panels in this scenario.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is, I feel like I'm between a rock and a hard spot on this one. Mostly the hard spot. As you know, when we brought this to the floor a couple of months ago, or whenever it was, it wasn't unanimous to spend the money on signage at this time. And I was one of them that suggested we don't spend the money now due to the economic circumstances in our community. However, council decided, and rightfully so, we'd move ahead with the project. The problem with the project is right where I figured it would be. We never had a design, and now we're trying to design it after we awarded it. And the price keeps changing, and the design keeps changing. And we're in a bit of a mess on this sign. It might be a lesson down the road that some of these things, you get a design up front, and then you go to tender. We might get it at a better price. But what I must say as a member of council, as much as I was opposed to this, there's about an $8,000 increase. Is that what it was? 4 signs, an $8,000 increase. I almost have to support the $8,000 because, quite frankly, I don't even like the number 1 sign, or A sign, pardon me. A sign. I think it's trendy as somebody said that, Councilor Thorson, it's out of date, and I don't think the border markers have anything to do with Lloydminster. We got some green signs that Highway put up out there, and it said Lloydminster. And you know what? People find this place. We still got to carry on and spend this kind of money. I feel like I have to vote to spend the $8,000 because I think you're really going to get, it won't look that great, that A plan, and if you're going to build it, you should build the B plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thanks, Your Worship. A couple things. One is that I spoke with the mayor from Marwayne. I think Cheryl, I'm not sure if she's a mayor.
Yes, she is.
Mayor of Marwayne, and in our conversation, we were talking about a relationship between Marwayne and Lloydminster. Which is, yeah, you guys are that border city, and you got those goalposts downtown. That's part of our identity. We are Canada's only border city. So you want to call them goalposts, you want to call them border markers. In the end, we are the border city. There's no other city in Canada that has that identity. So having that represented in there for me is important. It reminds people we are the only border city. I support those comments around, you know, the longevity of the sign, the classic look, and I think we need just to move on. I think we're spending more money discussing this thing than actually on the sign. We're getting 4 signs for less than the price we initially budgeted to get 2. I just think we need to move on.
Any other comments? Councilor Buckingham.
Thanks, Your Worship. Just a point of interest. we've got the two different, under B, just, people may have missed this part, should it go ahead, there you've got the Alberta Sask and the Sask Alberta, you want to just discuss where those signs are gonna go, because they are different, correct?
Yeah.
Depending on placement.
Yeah, so on the Saskatchewan side, the signs would be SK.
On the Alberta
Alberta
side,
side would be SK.
which is different than what we currently have, so.
Councilor Rowe.
I'll make the recommendation.
Certainly.
That council recommends sign design B for the entrance signage project.
Seconder? Councilor Wojcik. Any further discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any, all in favor?
Excuse me, did you say B sign?
B, sorry.
Yeah. I have to vote.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you.
Moving on to the agenda, 7.2, city manager to the office, city clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to take a second before we get to that item. As no doubt you've noticed, there's a new face and a new uniform amongst us today. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce you to Lloydminster Fire Chief Lee Sawicki. Lee, could you stand up, please? Chief Sawicki comes to the city of Lloydminster with more than 2 decades of experience as an emergency responder. Over the years, he has worked with several municipalities in multiple provinces, holding a distinguished resume which includes 5 years as the city task instructor of protective services and experience as fire service advisor to Indigenous communities in Alberta. On behalf of the Lloydminster community, we also extend a warm welcome to Lee's wife, Andrea. Their 4 children, Kaylee, Taryn, and Lane. Your Worship, the City Administration and Fire Department staff look forward to the continued enhancement of our community's fire protective services under Chief Sawicki's veteran leadership. Please join me in welcoming Lee.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. Lee, on behalf of council and the city, welcome to our city. We look forward to you getting settled in with your family as soon as possible, if they haven't already got here with you. But I'm sure they'll be trailing along as soon as possible. But look forward to it. I think you have opportunities and challenges that you'll find out the city faces every day. You're no stranger to that. Looking forward to it. I think we'll give you a fire master plan. That'll give you some work to keep you going for just a little while. Absolutely. Back to you, City Clerk.
Lee gets a pass on this one, so we're going to bring up Bill Hesson, Assistant Chief, to present this item. Bill?
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Administration. Here to present the radio integration project. Recommendation in front of you is the council approve the award of a single source purchase of 22 Alberta First Responder Radio Communication Systems, known as AFRACs, to White Communications Inc., Fleet Services of Edmonton, Alberta, in the amount of $91,172, excluding GST, to be allocated from the 2020 capital budget project number 2023004, and that mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. The current issue is the city has outgrown the current radio system used by the fire department, and in many areas we are unable to communicate with each other and with dispatch. Background, fire services is currently using a radio system that requires 2 separate radios to communicate with the different emergency groups. The current AFRAX radios the city owns have been sourced from White Communications Incorporated, and due to standardization of equipment, replacements, warranty, and service, administration is procuring the new radios and headsets from the same vendor. Options in front of you today are: number 1, council approve the award of the single source purchase of 22 AFRAX radios integration systems to White Communications Inc., Fleet Services of Edmonton, Alberta, in the amount of $91,172, excluding GST, to be allocated from the 2020 capital budget project number 2023004. A mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign and seal all necessary documents. Number 2, the council not approve the single source purchase of the 22 AFRAX radios. And number 3, council direct administration to gather more information, and that information be presented at the next council meeting. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Acting Chief. Sorry, I guess Assistant Chief.
Assistant, yeah.
I get this right, Assistant Chief. Thank you, Bill. Councilman Rowe.
I think this is great. I think it's very important to have seamless communication between all of our emergency services within our community. Just one question is, I know we've had to call on emergency services help for fire beyond our borders. So what type of communication will you be? Will you still have other radios that you're able to radio with those different departments, or how will you communicate with those departments if we switch completely to the AFRAC system? Or will we still have some sort of backup?
For the example, at the XL fire where we brought in Britannia and Legacy, they
Yeah.
brought their own radio systems and they were able to communicate with each other. And then we would just lend one of our radios if they needed to be in touch with our command or our system. But most of the time they were sectored into their own area that they were able to manage on themselves.
Excellent. Perfect. I think this is how the rest of the country is moving towards this sort of a system seamlessly throughout their cities. So I definitely think it's something that we need to do. And yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Joseph.
Thank you, Worship. Just curious, how many radios were we budgeting to buy? Was it 22? 22 budgeted to buy? Okay, perfect. And then, other than that, you know, my only real question is around kind of the logic behind sole sourcing this one rather than putting it up to tender. Given that it is, you know, quite a bit of money, I'm just curious why we took that approach this time.
So if I may answer that question, I think the reason we've taken that approach is because White Communications was the provider of our other AFRAX radio system. So in order to make sure that we have compatible equipment that the service and that sort of things, life and the radio and the batteries, there's some compatibility there. And that's why we're looking at maintaining that one service provider.
Okay.
Councilor Payne.
I often hear from concerned businesses and ratepayers when it comes to purchasing, and I take a look at that. A lot of them don't understand the whole process that we have to go through in order with our current trade agreements that we've got with Western Canada as well as North America. So on something like this, I have a great difficulty when we have 3 local radio two-way communication providers. And they all have access to these types of radios, and they're not even given a chance. And so that's what, that's where I really feel that it's very unfair for our local providers. And how many radios did we get, Bill, from on the initial purchase?
We got 3 with the previous purchase last year with public safety, and we're going for 22 on this one.
Correct.
Yeah, that would outfit all of our apparatus with the radio, with 3 to 4 radios each.
You know, I guess my comment on that would be, it's 3 radios and we're buying 22 more. We don't even know if there would be any savings if it wasn't went up for tender to not only our local, but perhaps some other vendors. Because I was taking a look at the Alberta government page, and there's certainly tons of radios that are approved, as well as many vendors as well. So I just feel that we haven't, that it's just a really short little list that we've got there. And I know that you're not, you're kind of walking in on this. You weren't all part of this process. So.
Absolutely, and I can speak to that. And speaking with Glenn will come up and speak to it too. He was previously with the radio purchase. Go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, Your Worship and Councillors. Yes, that's certainly one of the things we looked at when I started this process when we purchased the AFRAX radios for our peace officers, because our infrastructure was switching to AFRAX with our RCMP contract. I did contact local providers and was referred to the ones that were the preferred ones by the province as far as AFRAX. They get volume discounts with respect to these radios because they're dealing with a lot more of them. And it was approximately a 30% price difference when I was looking at them. And that's why we went with this particular vendor. Even amongst the vendors, this particular vendor was significantly lower when we got pricing. So that's why we went with them. The RCMP are using Motorola, we're using Harris. The backbone of the system was built by Harris, so the interoperability is really good with us. And the radios compared to the ones that we provided to the RCMP are about 45% of the cost. So they're very expensive radios because of the ruggedness and the characteristics of them. The way they penetrate, we're having a lot more success with these radios.
Yeah, I was in the radio business for a number of years, so I can appreciate that. And I also appreciate that these are all interchangeable. Mine is really just a principle. I know that I get calls from vendors when they're not successful, let alone having the opportunity to even bid on it. So, I'm just a little perplexed, a little concerned on that whole situation.
If I could chime in, Assistant Chief Hassan did go out for quotes, and this vendor was cheaper.
Okay.
So I believe he did
Yeah,
speak
it
to.
says that.
I understand that. It's just, I believe you did go out and speak to it.
Okay, so I'm crystal clear, I heard what you said, City Clerk, and I appreciate, Jim, what you said. So if we get challenged on the street by local businesses and say we didn't, where does that leave us? Because I want to make sure that I don't want to call anyone that there's been a lack of communication. I think we want to be crystal clear, because I've heard about it as well, from the perspective that we didn't get a chance to bid on this, and I'm not sure if we did a request for quotation originally and then it came to a final as a sole source simply due to the price, and I think that's how I'm kind of gathering that. That's where there's a little bit of disconnect in the community from today, and that's where the problem is. I think that some people people have changed from that perspective. I'm not sure when the quotes, the assistant chief went out for quotes, but there's some confusion in the community saying we didn't get a chance to bid on these. So that's where I think Councillor Fagan and myself were at from that perspective. We just need a little more clarity on that.
So, just to clarify on that part then, on this particular one, these 22 radios, we did not go out for quotes.
Okay.
On the previous one, when we contacted each of them, because it was only 10 radios versus 22, there was a significant price difference. And we went out and contacted them, and they referred us to Edmonton when I contacted those radio dealerships.
Okay.
Certainly we'll be utilizing them wherever we can locally.
Yeah.
I know I have a separate project with Atrax radios being installed in our vehicles, and the installation will go to our local contractors.
Absolutely, and I appreciate that.
But in this particular case, and that's the purpose of why we come to council with the sole source, is there's 22 radios going out, and we're going with the same vendor that we had before. They have what's called a daughter key that is proprietary, and that's how our radios are programmed, so that they're all the same.
Okay. So if I can ask this then, so in essence what you're planning on doing is buying 22 identical radios to what we have today. Okay. Now the question is there a chance that a local supplier could possibly meet those identical radios without the key?
The radio itself, yes. The key, again, is proprietary. So, but even then, the volume that the dealers that we went to in Edmonton or Calgary, we could have gone to Calgary as well, but the dealers that we went to in Edmonton sell many more radios and get volume discounts from the manufacturer. It just would not be competitive here because there's not a market for these types of radios locally other than for emergency services.
Councilor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. So far from everything that I've heard, I think I get it a little bit better, even based on the software that's on them that is proprietary in nature. But more as a general comment, not directed specifically at this. When we know we're buying something and it's a good and it has specific specifications that we know we need for a particular purpose, those types of things I think are totally appropriate to go out to tender regardless, based on the fact that all else is equal when you're buying a good, and really price, service, warranty, all those things are what you can score them on, and that's where, you know, a local vendor or some other vendor may decide to sharpen their pen on because they know that they can provide that specific good. I think this is a little more complex when you talk about the specific software that's on it that is proprietary. But even then, like the whole thing to me is tricky. You know, if you're buying a computer, you could say, oh, I'm looking for a Dell Optiplex 7800, and you could put it out there and you could get 25 bids. And there's not that many that probably do this, but at the end of the day, if someone else could get a Harris in or could make an attempt at it, then they probably would have if they would have known that there's an option for service, warranty, everything else that could have, you know, increased sales of that business, whether it's local, whether it's kind of local, whether it's not local at all. At the end of the day, we're trying to get the best value for our taxpayers and our local businesses, which sometimes includes using them and sometimes includes just getting the absolute best price if no one can compete. But we don't know that because we sole sourced, and that's where the difficulty is. We just don't know that we can prove that because you did get an awesome price on the first 3 or 4 that you bought. But is the price as good as buying a volume of 22 when it's a $100,000 sale? Hard to say. Someone might sharpen their pen a little more. That's all.
Councilor Nash?
So just a quick question, because I heard you were referred to Alberta. So the purchasing power or the purchasing that occurred or the offer to purchase, I guess here, is this part of kind of the system we have with bulk purchasing through the government? Or is there a discount because the government has, well, again, a preferred site to begin their merchandise, I feel like? Wait, Denise, help me out.
I think this is more the province's recommending a certain supplier.
Okay. So it isn't.
Because they are
Okay.
providing the city county province
Yes.
provided a certain pricing.
The province is the one that built the radio system itself to interconnect first responders, whether it be EMS, police, or fire.
Yeah.
From there, they say exactly which types of radios can go on the system. Yes, our local businesses probably can get those radios. But again, when you have vendors that are buying a couple of hundred of those at one time for resale, they get a bulk discount or a volume discount. So with us ordering 22 here locally, the better price is with the dealer in Edmonton. That's the process I went through last year when we purchased. And that's the reason, again, programming, service, warranty, it's all the same people we're dealing with versus having a piece of hardware and a piece of software and being two different responsibilities. This way we're going to one vendor for everything.
Just to follow up, I guess, I think all of that makes really good sense, and I think a part of it is that, you know, I think part of what we as council have been, you know, aspiring to is having a clarity around, you know, that messaging going out and what you just shared, I think would have gone a long way in terms of the front end somehow. I don't know how that will look in the process, but those are really good answers and I have supportable answers. I guess it's tougher to give the answer after the fact as opposed to the front part before we get to that stage. So I guess if we're going forward, we should have that information up front so that our community members understand that process and we understand that process and we can support it. Because I think it makes good sense and we want to support the process, but it's we're dealing with a communication issue as opposed to a radio buying issue, and those are two separate.
Councilor?
Thank you, Worship. No, all this is fine and good, but local businessmen want a chance to bid. And all we have to do in our conditions of tender, we say, well, we want to deal with one supplier. So if you buy something in 1975, does that mean you're going to buy the same fire truck for the next 100 years? Or do you give somebody else a chance that's in the same business? Because if you get in on the first bid, it seems you're automatically good to go for the next time. There are dealers in this town who are phoning about this exact tender. And all we had to say is you have to meet certain specifications, whatever those specifications are. I don't know about the software, and I don't know about the, all I know is the radio sets. I do know that some of our neighbors just bought phone radios, and they're compatible to these radios. This is what I was told. I have no facts on this, Your Worship. I'm just saying what I was told. I'm not going to do the research. And if we call a tender for 22 radio sets, and they can be supplied locally, if in fact the local contractors, I believe there's two for sure that can supply, and they can meet that spec, and they can meet the service requirement, and they're the right bidder, low bidder, then why wouldn't you give it to them? What happens is, I've said so many times, we get three answers: the right answer, the wrong answer, and the political answer. Well, politically, local businessmen want a chance to bid. It doesn't matter how convenient it is to phone a supplier that you know. We're all in that comfort zone. I used to be that way in the private sector. but you can't do that in the public sector. And we gotta take the time and give the local contractors an opportunity to bid. And that's all they ask, and if they don't win, they don't win. That's the rules of law. So I think that, Your Worship, we gotta consider what we're doing here and make sure we really know that we're being fair to the local businessmen. Thank you.
Councilor Thorson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just another question, just as far as the radios we already have, is there a cost associated or a cost associated with a software switchover? If for whatever reason you weren't using that proprietary software, you were using the proprietary software of whoever won the bid, had you gone to this one, or were those radios you already have no longer work?
That's the compatibility.
Yeah, would they be compatible one way or another? had
It
you-
could be made to be compatible.
Okay. And what was, how many did we buy already, and what was the approximate cost?
We bought 10 last fiscal year.
And they'd have been about 50,000?
That was a split. I ordered 3 for fire, for communication purposes and interoperability, so that their command vehicles would happen. And then the other 7 were for public safety between automated traffic enforcement and our peace officers.
Okay. And ballpark about 50,000 then?
For those 10,
Yeah.
it was right around the 35,000 mark.
Okay, but they were different than these ones, right? Because these ones are more mobile.
These are all portable radios.
Right. So they're more
In our language, I guess, a mobile radio is one that's installed in the car.
Right.
A portable radio is one that is attached to the person.
Okay.
Councilor.
I don't know, in my mind, it sounds like there's not a clear slate here, there's lots of gray area. And I think perhaps we should take a look at an option to perhaps bring back more information and take a little deeper look at it. I know that there's some of the dealers here, when you take a look at their vendor list, you've got Motorola, you've got Kenwood. These guys buy all the radios from Kenwood and from Motorola. So there's, the volume side of things. That could be questionable as far as, unless they're doing something for those particular digital radios. But most of the time when you're dealing with the manufacturer, you've got access to their full inventory, in my experience in 15 years in the radio business.
Any other comments? Councilor Monroe.
Yeah, I guess that's not the worst idea. I guess when you brought it to us, I just assumed that it was a very specific criteria that only certain distributors were able to provide us with this. I didn't realize that there would be local vendors that could potentially provide us with this type of radio. So maybe it is something worth bringing back and and I mean, it might be the exact same recommendation that comes back to us, but at least we know that the people locally have had that chance to put in their bid and yeah, I'm not sure.
Councilor Thorson.
I'm going to be honest. I really struggle with this because in a way, for me, the cat's out of the bag. You've got a pricing on 22. It is what it is. It's more of a comment on the process than it is specifically on this purchase. So under these circumstances, I would potentially regretfully, or I would have to support it based on the circumstances. But in terms of the process, I just don't see as this being the correct way to use sole sourcing. And that's just a general comment, and I'm not trying to point that out to anyone in particular. It's not finger pointing. It's not anything like that. I just don't believe that this is where sole sourcing is appropriate. And I'll leave it at that. I would probably support it reluctantly. That's it.
So I'll look for recommendation from council. Councilor Craig.
That council will direct administration to gather more information, that information to be presented at the next council meeting.
Seconder. Councilor Baker. Any further discussion? Not seeing it. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
We'll return to item number 6, the public hearings now that it's starting after the 2 o'clock hour, 6.1. So, public hearing regarding bylaw 202-2020, proposed municipal development plan amendment. I would like to note before we begin that during the public hearing, we ask that you respect the views of everyone here and allow each person their time to speak without interruption. Each person wishing to speak has up to 5 minutes to make a presentation to council. If you wish to speak, please state your name for the record and whether you are in support or opposed to the proposed bylaw. When you have finished speaking, please remain at the front as council may wish to ask you questions. All discussions of council members, city staff, and delegations shall be directed to the chairperson. Any questions brought forward by the public which are not able to be addressed during this meeting will be done so at the next council meeting. Council will not debate this matter during this hearing, and the decision regarding whether or not to grant the bylaw further readings will be dealt with following the public hearing. I hereby declare the public hearing for bylaw 02-2020, amendment to the municipal development plan, open at 2:11 p.m. I would ask the city clerk to confirm whether or not this public hearing has been advertised in accordance with the applicable legislation and to summarize the purpose of this hearing.
I confirm that this public hearing has been advertised and notice has been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation. This public hearing is advertised on Meridian Source on January 16th, 23rd, and 30th, 2020. And the purpose of this public hearing is for bylaw 02-2020, being the proposed amendment to the municipal development plan.
Thank you, City Clerk. I will now call upon anyone wishing to speak who is opposed to the proposed bylaw. I will now ask if anyone wishes to speak in favor of the proposed bylaw. I will now ask if anyone else who is affected by the proposed bylaw wishes to speak. As no members of the public were in attendance to speak to the matter, I hereby declare the public hearing for bylaw 02-2020 closed at 2:12 p.m. Moving on to bylaw 03-2020, proposed land use bylaw amendment. I declare the public hearing for bylaw 03-2020 being a proposed amendment to the land use bylaw open at 2:12 p.m. I would ask the city clerk to confirm whether or not the public hearing has been advertised in accordance with the applicable legislation and to summarize the purpose of the hearing.
I confirm that this public hearing has been advertised and notice has been provided in accordance with the applicable legislation. This public hearing was advertised in Meridian Source on January 16th, 23rd, and 30th, 2020. The purpose of this public hearing is for bylaw 03-2020, being an amendment to the land use bylaw.
Thank you, City Clerk. I will now call upon anyone wishing to speak who is opposed to the proposed bylaw. I will now ask if anyone wishes to speak in favor of the proposed bylaw. I will now call on anyone else who is affected by the proposed bylaw that wishes to speak. As no members of the public were in attendance to speak on the matter, I declare the public hearing for bylaw 03-2020 closed at 2:13 p.m. Moving on to agenda item number 7.4.
Your Worship, just a quick question, if I might. Point of order is that in the motion we made was to get more information. I'm unclear what that means. Are we asking them to retender, or are we asking them to get new prices? And because I'm sitting here, but I'm unclear exactly what the motion is intended to do and accomplish. So, if
I think administration will go away and they'll look at the process and look at the opportunity to bring that information back to council. If during that process they determine that they're going to retender, they'll advise council at that point.
so, we have no obligation at this point. I guess I'm concerned as I think about it now is that if we've tendered this, what obligation, if we have, we see this group, what I think it's called, White Communications, our obligations to them relative to the tendering process, and I guess that would be information you bring back. I'm good with that.
Good question, Councilor. Thank you for seeking clarity, and thank you, Supervisor, for the clarity on that. Moving on to 7.4, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, to present 7.4.1 2020-2021 Sask Lotteries grant allocation. I'll ask Patrick Lancaster before we present.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon, Patrick.
Administration has completed a call for applications for the 2020-2021 Saskatchewan Lotteries Community Grant Program. The grant program is funded through Saskatchewan Lotteries Trust Fund for sport, culture, and recreation, to which the municipality receives $81,414 that are to be distributed to nonprofit organizations run by volunteers that support recreation, sport, and culture activities in the community. With the completion of a call for applications, our FCSS Advisory Committee has reviewed 22 applications totaling over $177,000 in asks for grant funding. I would like to thank the committee for the time they put in over the holiday. We did our allocation review over December, meeting in early January to discuss what the allocations might look like. So of note with that number, our requests for funding have increased somewhat from the previous year's grant cycle. In the 2019-2020 cycle, we received 17 requests for funding at a total of $137,340. So somewhat of an upswing in our total asks. Our pool of funding that we have to allocate out does remain steady at $81,414 from the previous cycle, as those numbers come from the Canadian census data. So we receive funding from the trust fund based on our Saskatchewan population and the 2016 census. So the committee reviewed the applications based on whether or not they're related to sport, culture, and recreation, how they would impact the community, if they supported underrepresented populations as identified by Saskatchewan Lotteries Community Grant Program, financial need, community need, budget was clear on what they intended to achieve, and accessibility as far as were the programs accessible to residents. The allocations that the committee is recommending is $10,000 for the Lloydminster Interval Home, $8,900 to the Lloydminster Roman Catholic Central School Division, $4,000 to the Lloydminster Air Cadets, $3,000 to the Lloydminster Housing Authority, $4,214 to the Lloydminster District Centennial Commemorative Association, $2,500 to the Lydia Young Center, $7,000 to the Lloydminster Association for Community Living, also known as Inclusion Lloydminster, $5,000 to the Lloydminster Area Drug Strategy for the Youth Council program, so this would be for the activities and events that the Youth Council plans in the community, $1,500 for the Lloydminster Area Brain Injury Society, $5,500 to the Lloydminster Native Friendship Center. This is for a program that they are rolling out in partnership with the Lloydminster Local Immigration Partnership. So Catholic Social Services will be serving as a close partner on that project. $5,000 to the International Festivals Lloydminster Society. This is for Lloydfest 2020. $7,500 to the Lloydminster Special Olympics. $800 to the Lloydminster Social Action Coalition Society. This is for the drop-in shelter located above the Anglican Church downtown. $10,000 to Midwest Family Connections for Crafternoon Craftastic Day activities. $1,500 to Lloydminster Fellowship Village for the purchase of some fitness equipment, and $5,000 to the Lloydminster Area Drug Strategy. This is part of their partnership with the RCMP for their Youth Academy program.
So administration is looking for approval on these allocations from council, as well as the authorization for the FCSS Advisory Committee to reallocate any unused or returned grant funds. Are there any questions?
Mr. Patrick? Questions? Councilor Gacha?
Patrick, how good is your memory? I was trying to remember the International Festivals Lloydminster Society and their application. It seemed like there was a lot of money that was set aside for actual individual people to do things in there. They were going to directly benefit from it. So I'm wondering if their application looks a little different relative to what we saw initially to where they are now. And I may not, in fairness, be remembering all of it accurately, but did that proposal change at all?
Now you're referring to the proposal that was put in front of council for the third-party asks versus
Yes.
what they're... I couldn't really comment on whether or not the applications have changed between the two, because for the purposes of this committee, they're just looking at the application from Sask Lotteries. I will put out there that the way Sask Lotteries is put out, it is fairly restrictive on what can be funded and what can't be funded. So there are many activities, going by memory, from the ask to council or the third-party asks that would be ineligible under the Saskatchewan Lotteries program, particularly food, drink, giveaways, honorariums, and such. So for this particular ask, I believe eligible expenditures were primarily things such as tables, tents, and some of the cultural pieces.
Good, thank you.
I'm afraid I'd have to get more information on the list.
Councilor Buckley?
And thank you, Your Worship. I'll take a stab at that one from both sides sitting around this table and on the FCSS Advisory Committee. This particular one does meet the Saskatchewan Lotteries allocation and was completely different than what we saw around here. So two totally separate things.
Thank you, Councilor, for clarity. Councilor Larson?
Thank you, Your Worship. So I'd just like to say thanks to the FCSS Advisory Committee, because, you know, there would be a significant amount of time had we done the Sask Lotteries grant any other way, rather than to have the people who pour through these applications, score them, rank them, make sure meeting all the eligibility criteria. And because at the end of the day, I really do trust your judgment on these ones, and that we're putting the money in the right thing, and that we believe that all of them are going to, you know, accomplish what they're intended to. So I believe that would be true, and thank you very much to you, Patrick, and the committee that you lead. So that's really good. Thanks.
Certified?
Yeah, I would echo those same feelings. I had the pleasure of sitting on that board for a number of years, and I know how thorough and the amount of work that goes in, so I'm fully confident when they come up with a decision. It's been well thought out and well talked about, so full confidence.
I'll add that as well. I've had the opportunity to headship once on that committee and previously in my time as mayor. Certainly that we appreciate in this case, Councillor Buckingham representing council as he usually does, and all the people from the community that have stepped forward, volunteered, and have put an immense amount of time into reviewing it. Patrick and his team put together an excellent package for laying it all out. And again, thank you, Patrick, and Marie-Pierre for putting that together, because it's a lot of work. And I appreciate the committee taking that time to digest it and then debate it, because they do debate, and I can say they do go through that debate and come up with the numbers that they come up with. I appreciate them making that recommendation. Any other comments? Councilor Buckingham?
I'm prepared to make the motion, I'll make it.
Please do.
The council approved the following recommended grant allocations, and the council authorized the Family and Community Support Services FCSS Advisory Committee to reallocate any unused or returned grant funds. $10,000 to the Lloydminster Interval Home Society for the LCYC Recreation Support Program, $8,900 to the Lloydminster Roman Catholic Separate School Division, number 89 for Youth Sports Explorers and free adult family gym nights, $4,000 to the Lloydminster Air Cadets 186 Squadron Inc. for 186 Air Cadets, $3,000 to the Lloydminster Housing Authority for Halls Home Senior Fitness Classes, $4,214 to the Lloydminster District Centennial Commemorative Association for saving and sharing the Midwest televised history, $2,500 to the Louis Young Center Inc. for the Summer Recreation Program, $7,000 to the Lloydminster Association for Community Living for a Recreation Liaison, $5,000 to the strategy for Lloydminster Youth Council, $1,500 to the Lloydminster Area Brain Injury Society for Brain Fit, $5,500 to the Lloydminster Native Friendship Center for Connecting Us All Diversity and Inclusion Forum, $5,000 to the International Festivals Lloydminster Society for Lloyd Fest 2020, $7,500 to the Lloydminster Special Olympics for Special Olympics Lloydminster, $800 to the Lloydminster Social Action Coalition Society for Saskatchewan Lotteries Community Grant Program, $10,000 to Midwest Family Connections for Craftastic Day, $1,500 to the Lloydminster Fellowship Village Society for the Fellowship Village Fitness Program, and $5,000 to the Lloydminster Area Drug Strategy for the Lloydminster RCMP Youth Academy.
Thank you, Councillor. Second, Councillor Pagan. Is there any further, Councillor Pagan?
Just one question, Your Worship. And I'm sure there's an easy answer. $800 to the Lloydminster Social Action, which is a coalition society for Saskatchewan Lotteries Community Grant Program. What exactly am I reading there?
Actually, that is the, go ahead,
Your Worship. The programs are listed as they are filled out in the application. So the Social Action Coalition wrote as the program name, Saskatchewan Lotteries Community Grant Program. The specific expenditures for that, I believe, are yoga mats and an active recreation and board games for the drop-ins.
Okay.
So that's the center that's just opened above the Anglican Church, the second floor. That's being run for morning, noon, and afternoon activities from that perspective.
Yeah, just didn't make.
Yeah, that is the name of the organization. Sometimes it leaves it. Councillor.
Thank you, Worship. Just to add to that a little bit, I think we can safely say that their ask was more than that. They had specific things that they were looking at getting, and the committee decided on funding one particular portion of the things that they asked for, looking at all of their options and feeling that that was the best option for them. But there was a lot more that they had asked for.
Any other questions before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Patrick. Moving on to 7.7, City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, to present 7.7.1, bylaw number 2-2020, proposed MDP amendment for industrial for custom land exchange of Western Cash from Constitutional Court.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm here to ask Council to grant second and third reading to Bylaw 2-2020, being a bylaw to amend Map 2 future land use concept within Bylaw 1-2013 to industrial. In order to finalize the land exchange between the City of Lloydminster, Husky Midstream General Partnership, and Husky Oil Operations Limited, the subdivision of the described lands had to occur. Prior to the subdivision of the lands, all the lands within the subdivided area had to be of the same future land use. Following advertising, no additional concerns were brought to the attention of administrations and no changes were made to Bylaw 2-2020 after first reading. Lastly, Bylaw 2-2020 and Bylaw 3-2020 must be approved concurrently.
Thank you. Questions regarding the bylaw? We had an earlier public hearing. There was no comments provided. Has there been anything received through the department? No.
Nothing.
So when did you bring up the parcel in particular, just so everyone's clear what the piece of land was? So the green strip in red is the piece that we're looking at changing. And it's currently grass. From my head, that's the description, is that?
Through our bylaw, it's designated park, open space, and trails. But in essence, right now, it's a grass area.
Anyone have any questions? Councilor.
Your Worship, I may have missed this. In this land exchange, environmental assessment, is that an issue in the exchange?
Section Manager Stan.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, Councilor. Excuse me, getting over cold. We have exchanged all environmental documents that we have on both parcels, which are owned by the city and through Husky. And as recently as last week, both parties have accepted and acknowledge the use and what there is with regards to potential environmental conditions on the old properties.
So we have no liability.
That is
That's
correct.
my concern.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Councillor. I think that's something that we need to always be aware of, certainly from that perspective. Any other questions? If there's none, I'll look for direction from council regarding bylaw 02-2020, second reading. Councillor Buckingham.
Move the council grant second reading of bylaw number 02-2020, being a bylaw to amend approximately 2.722 hectares or 6.73 acres of part of Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th Meridian, within the Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th, on map 2, future land use concept in bylaw number 01-2013, to industrial.
Seconder. Councillor Thorson. Any further discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor, look the direction of the third reading. Councillor Buckingham.
Move the council grant third and final reading of bylaw number 02-2020, being a bylaw to amend approximately 2.722 hectares or 6.73 acres of part of Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th Meridian, within the Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th Meridian, on map 2, future land use concept and bylaw number 01-2013, to industrial.
Seconder. Councillor Bailey Donchak. Any further discussion before I call for the question? Not seeing any. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Natasha. I think we're back up here for one more.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm here to ask council to grant second and third reading to bylaw 3-2020, being a bylaw to amend the land use map being part 4 of bylaw number 5-2016 to I2 medium industrial district. Again, similar to the previous item, prior to subdivision occurring, all lands within the subdivided area must be of the same district within the land use bylaw. Just to add some clarity from our previous discussion, any future development within the parcel must conform to the regulations identified in current section 8.2 medium industrial district within the land use bylaw. As per our land use bylaw, the purpose of this district is to provide for industrial uses that carry out a portion of their operations outdoors or require outdoor storage areas, and any nuisances associated with these uses should not extend beyond the boundaries of the site. In the future, should any development permit be submitted, whether it be for a permitted or a discretionary use, through the powers of the land use bylaw, the development officer has the ability to obtain additional information. Some of these additional information requests include, but aren't limited to, noise impact study, environmental nuisance and health impact assessment, and assessment of risk for industrial areas. Details surrounding these special information requests are in section 2.9 of our land use bylaw. Following the review of that information, the DO would then be able to render a decision. Again, following advertising, no additional concerns were brought forward to administration, and no changes were made to bylaw 3-2020 since first reading.
Thank you, Natasha. Questions or comments? So Natasha, for my information, the property on the right side of what I'm looking at
Yes.
Was originally industrial or medium industrial, correct? Are we changing that zone?
It's already medium
Yeah,
industrial.
so all we're doing is just making that complete parcel.
Correct.
That after our last bylaw. Okay. Just to be absolutely crystal clear, people think there's something's going to change there. There's already industrial on.
Yes.
Or has been in the past, subject to our economy. Any other questions? Or comments? Not seeing any, I'll look for direction on 7.7.2. Councillor Buckingham.
With the council grant second reading of bylaw number 03-2020, being a bylaw to amend approximately 2.722 hectares, 6.73 acres of part of Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th, within the Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th, on land use map being part 4 of bylaw number 5-2016 to I2 medium industrial district.
Thank you. Seconder? Councillor Dowchak. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'll look to council for direction on third and final reading. Councilor Buckingham.
Move the council grant third and final reading of bylaw number 03-2020, being the bylaw to amend approximately 2.722 hectares, 6.73 acres, as part of Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th Meridian, within the Southeast Quarter Section 11, Township 50, Range 1, west of the 4th Meridian, on land use map here, Part 4, to bylaw number 5-2016 to I-2 Medium Industrial District.
Seconder. Councilor Patton. Any further discussion or comments? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Patrick. Moving on to agenda item number 7.7.3. Yes, 7.7.3. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Worship, to present bylaw number 4, 2020, supplementary bylaw of Scott Craigie, Ontario.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council. Subject matters bylaw number 04-2020, supplementary bylaw. Recommendations that council grant second reading to bylaw number 04-2020, supplementary assessment of improvement bylaw, and that council grant third and final reading to bylaw number 04-2020, supplementary assessment improvement bylaw. The issues council is required by the Westminster Charter to annually authorize supplementary assessments. To impose a tax on properties that were substantially completed or further constructed during the current year, which were not captured in the current property assessment. Administration is requesting direction from council to pass the supplementary assessment bylaw. This supplementary assessment will be used to adjust the current tax levy. Section 261 of the Westminster Charter states, if the council wishes to require preparation of supplementary assessment for improvements, council must pass the supplementary assessment bylaw authorizing the assessments to be prepared for the purpose of imposing a tax under Part 10 the same year. Option 1 is council grant second and third and final reading to bylaw number 04-2020. Option 2, council not grant second and third reading to bylaw number 04-2020, where the council recommend changes to bylaw number 04-2020 supplementary assessment improvement bylaw. Pass back to you, Your Worship, for questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Tom. Questions, comments? Again, a housekeeping matter falls with council. If there's no questions or comments, I'll look for direction from council on 7.7.3.
Move that council grant second reading of bylaw number 04-2020, supplementary assessment of improvements bylaw.
Second, Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Look to council for direction third and final reading. Councilor Patrick.
Move that council grant third and final reading to bylaw number 04-2020, supplementary assessment of improvements bylaw.
Second, Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, I'll call for the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Scott. I believe you're back up again. To the city manager, 7.7.4. Scott.
Thank you again. Subject matter bylaw number 05-2020 is the GNC Francophone Education Region number 2 property tax exemption. Recommendations that council grant first reading to bylaw number 05-2020, the GNC Francophone Education Region number 2 property tax exemption bylaw. Issues administration is looking for approval for a new bylaw to grant a property tax exemption to the Greater North Central Francophone Education Region number 2 in Lloydminster. Some background: administration is first contacted by the GNC Francophone Education Region number 2, stating that they were exempt from property taxes as they are a school division established under the Act of Alberta. However, due to the wording of the Lloydminster Charter, the school division is required to own and occupy the property in order to qualify for exemption. In the rest of Alberta, the legislation states that the school division can own or occupy the property and would be exempt from property taxes. As the GNC Francophone Education Region does not own the property, they are not automatically exempt as they would be anywhere else in Alberta. Administration encourages the organization to submit an application for property tax exemption under the Community Organization Property Tax Exemption Regulation, or COPTR. However, their application revealed that they would not qualify under COPTER due to the restricted nature of the school. Students are required to be of Francophone descent to enroll, so they do not meet the COPTER requirement of their property not being restricted for more than 30% of the time. Administration obtained legal advice on alternative options for a Francophone school to obtain property tax exemption. The only sections of the Lloydminster Charter that would permit exemption are Section 295 and Section 313. Section 295 is very general and allows council to cancel, reduce, or defer property taxes. This section has not been used in the past and could set a precedent for its use. Section 313 is specific to nonprofit organizations and allows for the establishment of bylaws exempted for taxation property held on nonprofit organizations as defined in Section 183F of the Lloydminster Charter. Section 183F includes the definition of nonprofit organization as any other entity established under the law of Canada, Alberta, or Saskatchewan for the purpose other than to make a profit. The GNC Francophone Education Region Number 2 meets this definition as it was established by the Education Region under the Ministerial Order of the Government of Alberta. Section 313 does not require the school to own the property, but allows it to be held by the nonprofit organization. So option 1 is the council grant first reading for bylaw number 05-2020, the Greater North Central Francophone Education Region Number 2 property tax exemption bylaw. Option 2, council rejects first reading, or option 3, council requests further information. Pass back to you, Your Worship, for questions or comments.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Councilor Dutch.
And that's as I think, Scott, one of the, sort of dissecting this is important, because I hear that the school is exempt from taxes, but the school is currently not paying taxes. The school rents. So technically, the owner of the property is the one who pays the taxes. So how do we negotiate this, where, you know, the renter, pardon me, the owner of the building is one technically responsible for paying the taxes?
Under their lease agreement, the owner of the property in the agreement defers the paying of taxes to the school itself. So what happens under our organization right now is that the owner of the building pays the tax to us, and then he bills the school for the tax unpaid. So, and that's in their agreement, right in their lease, states that they have to pay taxes, they're responsible. She told me, the CFO that I was talking to, that they agreed to that because they're under the understanding that they're exempt, as they would be anywhere else in Alberta.
Is that the kind of agreement we would see in other places? Because other school divisions have, they call it outreach schools, so they're renting property downtown. And when I was with the prior school division in Northern Alberta, I don't recall us having that kind of lease agreement at all.
Yeah, I can't speak to other schools. I can just, we've reviewed this lease agreement as part of the COPTER request, and they would have met it under COPTER other than the fact that they're restricted in nature. So, but they are required through the property owner to pay the taxes.
Any other questions, Councilor Dutch?
Yeah, I feel the need to explore more with other divisions and how they're dealing with this, because I know we're not the only ones. I know there are a lot of outreach schools, and in Edmonton Public does it. There's multiple schools, and I guess I want to get that information on how other communities have dealt with it. I'm not sure, was that question asked of legal as to just because they have a lease agreement and it sets up the taxes separating in a separate amount, or it sounds like it's the agreement that's driving the tax.
Yeah. The only question we asked legal were what were our options. First, I wanted to confirm that I was correct in my interpretation of the COPTER, that they wouldn't qualify, and we were told we were correct. Then we asked them what other options, because the beginning of this happened about a year and a half ago, where we received a letter from their lawyer requesting their taxes paid back to them because their lawyer was stating that they were exempt under the Act. So then I brought that information back to their lawyer saying they're not because of the charter, and here's the reason. So then they came back and I told them the only way they could, I guess, move forward with the true COPTER. Then we determined that we weren't qualified there. So my question to our legal team was, what other avenues do we have to bring forward? Because they wanted me to come forward to council with something.
Because there's another element to follow up in, and I think that what happens is that when school divisions are renting, it becomes part of their operation expenditure, so they need to be actually getting grant funding for that.
Yeah.
And if they are getting grant funding for that rent, then this is just a deal between the owner of the facility and the people renting it.
I did ask that question to her if they were getting grant funding for their taxes, and she said no.
Yeah, but that's not quite the question that,
Yeah.
they do get money when you rent a facility, and so that's a piece relative to education funding, I think should be explored.
Yeah, okay. She seems very motivated, as far as
I hear
that's,
that, yeah.
so, I guess we can go back and ask her about that, but I did ask the question, was there any grant funding in place for her taxes? And she said, no, none at all.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be for taxes, but it would be for renting a facility, which are two different questions.
Yeah.
Councillor Torres.
Thank you, Your Worship. This one's, the whole thing is kind of, it's an odd one, and I thank you for bringing it to council, rather than trying to make it fit in places where it just quite doesn't. And to me, we've got some kind of goofy things going on with the own and occupy versus own or occupy, and I'm kind of of the belief that this should be treated like all other school divisions would be in this scenario, just because they maybe have smaller budgets, they don't necessarily own property, and that's not an option for them. I don't see why we should necessarily treat them any differently. But I'm just wondering, is this the only kind of angle we can get there with, or is, because having a new separate bylaw related to this just confuses me a little bit as far as, because otherwise we have our property exemption bylaw itself. Could we not do an amendment to that rather than having a separate bylaw specifically for this school, just for the owner-occupy kind of part of it? Because from my understanding, owner-occupy is okay within that, or am I way offside here?
No, in the new MGA, under the own or occupy, they would be fully exempt. We would have no control over it under the new MGA. It's because we're under the charter. It says own and occupy. So whenever time legislation is updated in the charter, and we assume those parts of the act, then that property is going to become automatically exempt, and the bylaw is going to no longer need it. So that's the reason that our legal said we're probably best in its own bylaw, so that we can just repeal that bylaw when it's no longer needed. The reason I don't really want to use 295 is because all that does is gives council the opportunity to cancel the taxes. And say for some reason, when school closes, if council used 295 and canceled the taxes and school closed in June, then we could not go back after the property owner for the remainder of the year, which under this bylaw, I'd be able to go back and make it a taxable property, because it's no longer used by the Franklin School Society, and charge taxes for the remainder of the year.
Okay, that makes sense.
We're going to come speaking, and we'll come back to this question.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I was quite surprised to see this on the agenda. It's never gone to a governance and priority committee meeting. Never seen it before on Thursday night. And here it's sitting here as a bylaw in front of us. And we bring so many things to governance priority committee that are a lot less important than this. And why it's on the table, I don't know, but that's for someone else to answer on another day. First of all, you must own or occupy the property to even can be considered. Under the Lloydminster Charter, the Copter rules say you cannot do this. We spent months just preparing our bylaw, or if you want to call it that, bylaw and rules for tax-free exemptions. And now we want to waive that and bring out a little rule that says, well, we can waive them if we like. Well, then you might as well just get rid of the bylaw and waive the ones you like or the ones you don't like, really. Why do you need the bylaw? And I guess I'm a little upset because we hadn't got a lot of information about this. Administration suggested that community organizations, tax exemption regulation, COPR, and we know that won't work. This organization wouldn't qualify due to the restrictive nature of the school. The issue is that only students of certain descendants of a specific nationality can attend. This is not a public school. To me, uneducated in the world of education, because that's not even our realm. All we do is collect the taxes and send them back. That's what we've said for 25 years. and now we want to get into the school business. And this is a closed school, call it what you like, and if people want to take their kids and send them to a private school, we get to pay. Like you send your kids to a private hockey school, you pay. If we take this forward, deduct the tax, and it comes back to the city, and we send it to the school division, all the taxpayers in the city get to subsidize the few people that are going to that school. And it's nothing personal, but we have a public school system and a Catholic school system that have rules, how we collect the taxes, how the money goes back, the provinces allocate the funds, and the story. The Director of Education stood in this council chamber about 6 months ago when I made an error and said, well, we're talking about school policing. And I said, well, why can't the school police do it? He said, correction, Councillor Baker, we don't collect money anymore. And he had the point. He won that one and he was right. It was something separate. At the end of the day is, I've got to make some notes. Education is covered in our charter, and we just spent much of the time talking about private tax-free organizations, in my mind, should not qualify. My children are growing up, but they're not from any ethnic descent attached to the school. They couldn't go there, but I could get the help pay for it. Does that make any sense? I don't even know why it's on the table. I know we're trying to say that because Alberta allows it, they've downloaded that on the municipality. They haven't paid the bill, they've downloaded it on the municipality. And we're saying in the report that someday we may have to amend the charter. We may have to, Your Worship. This charter was developed many years for a really good reason. It's to keep this city balanced between the two provinces. We can't say, well, Alberta wants this, so we'll change the charter. And tomorrow we'll say, Saskatchewan wants that, so we'll change the charter. We might as well get rid of the charter and introduce two government agencies back into the city and operate like they did 75 years ago. There may be a whole bunch of information I don't have, but I really was disappointed that this even showed up without any kind of further research and debate by council at the GPC meeting or wherever his worship would like to discuss it, if at all. But to bring it here as a bylaw, cold turkey, 2 days, I haven't had time to do any research. I was away Thursday, didn't revisit the Friday night, and we're supposed to deal with it on Monday. I think there's something drastically wrong here. And I will make a motion whenever you accept it.
So, Councillor, I just want to clarify a couple things. This is a first reading, so this is the opportunity to bring it forward and start that very discussion that you wanted to ask for. And there we'll give that opportunity to
You're going to have to introduce it.
Well, and I appreciate that. I think that from the perspective, it's something the administration had been working on and tried to come with based on the legal. And for the information I have, and I'll look to the city clerk to confirm this, under the Alberta school regulations or the Alberta education regulations, the school in question is considered a public school. Is that right?
That's my understanding according to the legislation.
That's okay.
Okay.
Just a ministerial order in place that puts them as part of the regulated under the Education Act.
Under the Education Act, so, Councillor.
Yeah, I think there's another section in the capital manual, and it's under review, so it's worth looking into, but leasing of facilities in Alberta, school jurisdiction may receive funding to lease appropriate facilities when other accommodations options are not available or practical to accommodate current enrollment. Where potential funding is requested, lease support must be provided by education. They go below to say lease support is provided on a triple net basis, which includes taxes, insurance, and major maintenance in addition to the rent. So I think we need to look perhaps less in municipal governance and more in educational governance and have legal review that. Because perhaps they're even ignorant of the fact that they're receiving funding already through the triple net arrangement. And it's section 2.5.1. So they're already getting the money.
Yeah, well, I agree with Councilor Baker and I check that there needs to be a little bit further investigation on this, and at that time there's a number of different questions. And one would be, I guess, as far as all our schools are under the Saskatchewan school legislation, and so I'm not sure this is all being compared to in Alberta. If it was in Alberta, so if it was in Saskatchewan, would it be
Yes, so we qualify
Okay.
for exemption. We use Saskatchewan school system, but we're following, and we're using the Saskatchewan Education Act, but that would still be qualified under there. So we're just, they're comparing to Alberta because that's where we're physically located, but we've checked both sides and they still would be. And Councilor Dodgeck would probably know better than I
I
do.
think it's important to clarify that funding arrangements follow the individual's provinces relative to their funding standards. So in fact, schools are funded much differently in Saskatchewan than they are in Alberta. Alberta tends to fund schools on a per pupil formula. Saskatchewan uses a formula that says we're funding you on a school, a principal, a secretary, so it's a whole different structure. And then the other part is that in terms of support for facilities, they used to have a building quality restoration program in Alberta that was funded quite richly. And Saskatchewan just introduced theirs about 8 years ago or 10 years ago, which is significantly lower. So there are different programs on either side of the border, but they're funded on a proportional basis so that, you know, the whole idea is that it's seamless. And Alberta doesn't care if you spend Alberta money on the Saskatchewan side and vice versa.
I got Councilor Thorson and Councilor Baker.
No, I got
I thought you
nothing.
had that.
Interesting.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Worship. As you well know, the city taxpayers on the Alberta side are already putting in extra dollars to make the school divisions equal within our city. And I think the total take last year was in the range, and I stand to be corrected, because I don't remember, but $2 million. That may be right or wrong, but it was a lot of money.
That'd be close, yeah. That would be close.
And you're referring
Okay.
to the
So
seamless
we're all
education
in
levy, Councilor, just so everybody's clear, that's the seamless education levy that you're referring to that's applied across the city.
The $2 million would have been collected from both Alberta and Saskatchewan residents.
I don't know what the
Around
split
that number
is,
is.
60-40.
No, but it is spread across the entire city.
Yeah, my mistake. But say it's half of that is Alberta. We're subsidizing the programs that aren't provided in Saskatchewan. And somewhere along the line, the city fathers decided that Saskatchewan was going to look after education in the city. And now, we're already subsidizing it over and above our regular Alberta taxes, if you live in Alberta. And now we're saying we should write a check for some more education as a subsidiary payment or not, and an extra payment. So when is it going to stop? What would happen if somebody with 4 children who wanted to homeschool? I don't know how that works, but we could open up Pandora's box here by passing a bylaw of this nature. What about another ethnic group that came in and wanted to start with just descendants from their ethnic group? We could have 20 different ethnic groups in here asking to start their own school. I don't know all the legalized information in the background with the provinces, and it doesn't really matter. But I do know what could happen, and we still have to deal with it. And when one group, I know it's in the Canadian Charter, certain rights for certain people, but at the same time, why would we want to get into this? Why would we even want to get into it? When all our job is to collect the taxes, and we've been saying that for years and years and years. And I don't know what's driving this, but until the province comes along and says, you must not, because we're a child of the province, why would we want to get into this? Because what comes next?
But the reason I'm bringing it forward is the property owner has asked, the school division has asked for me to bring it forward to council. So I tried to find what options council could actually consider, and I ruled out the ones that you couldn't consider. So, I mean, that's the reason I'm bringing it forward, is because they were asking for it to be done, and that's why I'm here today. As far as public school, because they're under the act, they're considered to be, they have ministerial order saying they're part of the school division. So that, in my mind, makes them a public school. The fact that they're francophone, have to be francophone descent. If I choose to have my child as a, go to French immersion, that's my choice to do that compared to the English version. And just to further clarify on the seamless levy, that's paid across the entire city by all residents based on the mill rate that's applied through the seamless levy agreement. And that, and look, Councilor Dodgeck might be able to elaborate a little better, but I think that balances it on both sides. There's things Saskatchewan pay for that Alberta doesn't, and the other way around. So I think it's intended to balance it across all our students for the
I understand that. The French immersion is already offered in the public school.
Yes.
But we have a private school.
I think it's just important to keep some parameters on some things. And one is that schools qualify for funding, and the type of funding they qualify under facilities and capitals is outlined there. So they may not even be aware that they're actually receiving funding, and may not have engaged in the process to access funding. But there's, I sent you a copy of the plan.
So if what I'm hearing, council, is maybe council needs some more information on this item. Perhaps if I could suggest that council request further information from the administration to bring it forward to a future.
I'll make that motion. I'll move that council request further information from administration. Bring the bylaw back to a future council meeting for decision.
Seconded by Councilor Monroe. Any further discussion? Not seeing any, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, Tom. Moving on to item number 8, correspondence and information items. Thank you. Moving on to number 9, Mayor and Councilor's report. I don't have a report attached. Most of council attended the municipalities of Saskatchewan. I'm still getting my name twisted around, but known formally as SUMA, Saskatchewan Municipality Association, and then changes has commenced. It was a good convention. I think that we all came away with a lot of information on different sorts. I had a chance to interact with ministers of the government of Saskatchewan, fellow mayors and councillors from municipalities throughout Saskatchewan, which was really good. Conversations were held regarding our wastewater treatment plant, other people's challenges from water and sewer, as well as infrastructure. I have no real announcements that I wish we could share with the community that we came home with anything special. For our community directly, but certainly the Premier did share that there will be some additional monies in the municipal revenue sharing with the government of Saskatchewan in the new budget. So we'll look to that. That number was pitched out, and I think when it comes down to it, there'll be a couple $100,000 maybe, 200 give or take, depending on once the pot is allocated. We're talking $26 million more dollars in the pot. But when you spread that across Saskatchewan, it's 795 odd municipalities. It gets a little thin at the end of the peanut butter. So we'll see where that goes. Certainly, I think it was some very informative sessions. I did want to acknowledge Councillor Monroe and Councillor Torres in receiving their Municipal Leadership Development Program certificates of completion. That involves taking courses usually at the convention or before the convention, and other times taking time away to become more knowledgeable. I think that was a great accomplishment for both of them, and I'd like to congratulate them.
We should step in and congratulate you, your worship, as well, for receiving the same recognition at that event. So there were 3, not just 2. Congratulations to all 3 of you.
Yes. Thank you.
Congratulations.
So it was always it's been a learning process, that's for sure. As people have asked, what course do you take to become a mayor or a councillor? And as Councillor Baker knows, it's the school of hard knocks, I think is the term that he would refer to. And appreciate that. And I appreciate the other councillors as they work through that training program, because it is a very valuable information that's provided. From that perspective, certainly another busy week in the community. We have AgriVision hosting the agricultural community in our community this week at the Lloyd Exhibition Grounds. If you haven't got a ticket for Wednesday night's dinner and featured speaker, Rex Murphy, known well in the CBC world, as well as an outspoken individual in the Financial Post and other publications, will be the guest speaker this week. So I encourage people, if you had wanted to hear Rex Murphy, he does it, you can see him live rather than hear him on the radio or TV. So an opportunity. Certainly we have the Family Day weekend coming up next weekend, and I know that we'll be celebrating that at the city, and the city staff have events planned for the Service Sports Center on Monday. So I hope that council and members of the community can turn out for that and enjoy hopefully a beautiful day if the weatherman is cooperative. And lastly, I just want to thank the residents and remind them that snow clearing operations are still ongoing in the residential area. Appreciate the work that's been done by city staff and contractors, and hope that people will work with the city and the contractors as they try to be as efficient and as effective as possible. And that requires people not to be parking on the streets during 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, to allow the snowplows to complete their work if the signs are out, and ask people to be aware of that. And it's a challenge, and crews are working to be as safe and as efficient as they can be, but it takes cooperation in the entire city to make that happen. So thank you to the teams that are working on that. Any other comments? Councilor Bacon, up again.
Thank you, Worship. A couple other notes from the municipalities of Saskatchewan conference that I wanted to bring forward publicly. The first one being the recognition of our team at the city for the Grease Beast initiative. That was recognized provincially with a municipal award. And congratulations to Leo and his communication staff and everybody that had a part in that, from building it to hauling it around to our wastewater treatment people, all of those things. So a big congratulations for being one of 3 awards handed out at that province-wide. It's open to everybody province-wide. We were one of 3 recipients, and that's no small feat. So thanks, Leo and your team and everybody that had a part in that. That's a big deal. Yeah, it's great to be recognized in front of 1,000 delegates. The Lloydminster received that award is awesome. So thank you. Secondly, and I know he hates it, so I'm just going to move over just a little bit. We also had the opportunity to see on a great big screen, 4 sides, Councillor Baker up there. I have the picture. If you follow me on Twitter, you can see the picture of Councillor Baker receiving the Meritorious Service Award for over 20 years of service in the municipal world in Saskatchewan. So we were there to see his name up in bright lights and have him recognized in front of 1,000 delegates at the President's Banquet as well. So it's an honor and a privilege to sit beside you, and the city's lucky to have had you for all these years doing everything that you've done. And that's no small feat either to get that recognition for over 20 years. So congratulations.
Thank you, Councilor Buckingham. Any other comments? Not seeing any, I'll move to any other matters that this council needs to deal with at this time. Not seeing any, I will look to inquiries from the media.
Thank you, Your Worship. Today we have requests from the media for yourself, Mayor Albers, Councillor Buckingham, Councillor Thorson, and Councillor Fagnan.
Thank you. I'll look for
Motion to recess.
motion to recess, seconded by Councilor Fagnan. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, we do. I just don't think there's any.
I'll buy it right now.
I'll push it. over 60%.